I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Today we have one of my favorite people on the entire planet. Our guest is Anne-Marie Enns. Anne-Marie is an award-winning event producer. She's a speaker and the co-founder of Pulled In Productions, which is an event production company. She is widely considered a specialist in live and virtual events, strategic partnerships, and in the immersive technology market segment. Her long list of legendary event productions include TED, Bloor Street Entertains, Honda Celebration of Light, Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, CVR, and the VR/AR Global Summits. When not producing events, Anne-Marie can be found hanging out at the beach, playing Yahtzee, meditating, and exploring the Sunshine Coast. Anne-Marie is my sister, and our voices sound the same, so this interview should be interesting, so pay attention. But what I really want to share with you today is Anne has been on this incredible journey regarding her health. So today we are talking about the off-ramp of all of the many career accomplishments to talk about the ideas that her body has. We're also going to talk about women's heart health and living intentionally. So Anne, I welcome you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm so thrilled to have you here. And I think it's just so important for people to hear the many, many facets of this story. So we were just talking off mic, and I'm just curious if you want to just start wherever you feel like the beginning is, but we want to hear about your body and your heart and how it might have had other ideas than your head did.
It did. My heart had totally opposite ideas to what my head thought I should be doing. So that's a really good way to put it. I think I should start with, I've been running my own company for a long time. I've got a very active 9-year-old boy at home. And I think that I always, I was living in that woman running her own business mode, and I had to be the great mom mode, and we're homeschooling and we're doing this and we're doing that. And I never, ever took time for myself. And I'm sure that's a common trait with most women that you talk to, but everything else just always came first. And so I guess it was about 2 years ago, I wasn't feeling great, but I thought I was just tired. I thought I was just stressed and exhausted because, I was running these big events in person before, all the COVID online events. And, it was back-to-back meetings, and I was traveling to conferences, and I was always on the phone. And in between that, taking my son to all of his sports and just, quote unquote, regular life. And so I thought I was just tired from that. And I was told by a doctor at that point that I had chronic bronchitis because I couldn't stop coughing. And so I just chalked it up to that. I was, I ate a little bit healthier and, cut out sugar and was trying to do all of that. And then we had a big move that happened in our lives. We got offered an event in Portugal. So we moved from Toronto to Portugal in the fall. It was in November. And I really was worn out. I was run down. I was tired. But once again, I just chalked it up to we're moving to a whole different country and, closing up our house in BC, and we stopped in Toronto to see family, and then went there. But things just weren't getting better, and I was having trouble breathing. I talked to doctors, but I guess because of my age, because I was 41 at that point, They just said, you're tired, you're working too much. It's common for women your age. Maybe you're starting perimenopause. We don't know. Nobody really had an answer. And at one point, I remember just walking down the street to go look at a place that we were going to rent in just outside of Lisbon. And I had to sit down in the middle of the street. And I was like, something is seriously wrong with me. Like, I can't walk up this hill. What's going on? And we ended up rushing home back to Canada. I went into the hospital immediately off the plane. My legs were, about the width of my head, both of them, and it's agony after a 12-hour flight. So when I was in the hospital, I got diagnosed with congestive heart failure and atrial fibrillation, and I genetically have a hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And so they told me that my heart was 2 sizes larger than it was supposed to be, and that it had probably been beating way too fast for way too long, and that's why I'd been coughing and out of breath. So I kind of hit a plateau there and was in the hospital for 8 days trying to just get my body back in order from that.
Yeah, like I've never seen you look like that. And I have to say, like, for reference, like you and I had talked maybe a few days prior. And I just say this for context for anybody listening too. Like, well, you didn't maybe really know what was going on. I definitely didn't. I thought maybe you were just, yeah, like stressed, like having a breakdown. So, like you just sometimes also don't even know. We really don't know what's going on, is what I'm trying
No,
to get across. And then, like, with all of the heart conditions you just described, like, for somebody just listening, could you like put it in like 101 terms? Like, what do each of those things just mean in the simplest of terms?
sure. And I can also talk about how I felt because
Yes.
we've talked about how when you Google it for women, like it's
Yes.
really, and especially young women, well, I consider myself young at 40
You
and
are?
something, but there's nothing out there that tells you what's going on with your body. So it's really interesting. So what I was feeling when I was there is I was short of breath. I just couldn't catch my breath. I felt like someone was standing on my chest. And I got really swollen, but my abdomen was really swollen. Like it almost felt like when I was 3 months pregnant, how all of a sudden your tummy's hard. It's not necessarily sticking out, but it's just hard.
Yeah.
And my feet and my legs were swollen. And I also had really restless legs at night. Like I just couldn't get it into order. So when I went into the hospital, I got so for congestive heart failure, what it is you have too much liquid that's around your heart. So actually, well, I was in there for 8 days. I lost uh, 30 liters of water out of my
Still blows
body.
my mind. Like, when I think of that or tell people, because
I
I've
know.
heard of other people, like women, well, just even a little bit older, if they have swollen ankles now, I mean, I'm not going to like be scaring them, but I'm like, you really need to get that checked out because
Yeah,
sometimes it's an indication of something going on elsewhere.
it was. And it's crazy because you think about it, you're like, could you carry 30 liters of water home from the grocery store? And you're like, no,
Yeah.
like I need a cart. Like what was in me? And so it's a buildup of water. So that's where the swelling was coming from. And that's where the difficulty breathing was coming from because everything was just compressed in there. And so for atrial fib, what it is my heart is erratic. It beats way too fast, and it doesn't beat in any set rhythm. So it's basically chaotic. And it's really funny when I think back about it. Like I felt chaotic. Like my mind felt chaotic, my body felt chaotic. I really felt just like when you said we were on the phone and you thought I was having a breakdown. Like I didn't know what was going on, but I realized like physically that's how I was feeling too. It
Hmm.
wasn't just mental, like, whoa, I'm in a new country and I got to navigate the language and how to use the subway. Like that's chaotic in its own breath. But I felt like I couldn't catch up to anything, no matter what I did psychologically. But then I realized my body never would have let that happen because that's just how I felt. And then cardiomyopathy is hereditary and it's a thickening of the heart wall. So put the three together, and I have a very fast, very hard beating heart that basically pumped so hard it got 2 sizes bigger than it should have been. do the opposite to the Grinch. I was 2 sizes too
I
big.
well, that's what I tell people. I'm like, yeah, well, I am the Grinch of the family because my heart is 2 sizes too small.
No, I don't think that's true. But
But yeah,
yeah.
like it's just remarkable, like that it felt extreme to me. I was just like, wow. And I know, yeah, like it was just so much information for you to take in. So I'm not sure what you want to share with us next, but I definitely also want you to speak to, like the kind of care that you actually received and what care was it beneficial to receive.
So when I was in the hospital, I was treated basically just to get my heart in the working order it needed to be in for me to survive. And then I was sent home with a whole bunch of drugs. And the whole point of my treatment was to just make sure I was living. And that was pretty much about it. Like there was no personal touch, and I had great clinical medical care, but there was nothing else that went along with that. Like I was a number, I was weighed, I was, like it was just checking the boxes of, yes, your heart's going better, this is this, that sort of thing. And what I found I really needed was like a total reset for my entire life. I needed to calm down. I needed to take a break and to really take care of myself. I really needed to rest, like rest my mind and rest my body. And so I looked into meditation. I looked into yoga. I started doing, concentrated breathing exercises because I still couldn't breathe very well. And so, and then I found, I really needed to read about my mind, body, heart connection and what was going on, because clinically I knew what was happening, but mentally I realized that, there's a direct correlation between what's going on. And I really needed to concentrate on that side of my life and really just take care of me. So I read a lot. I did a lot of classes. I went to a lot of retreats, and I found a lot of peace and comfort in all of that, which I think was the most important thing on my journey, which is still not over, but it's definitely on its way. And I really need that balance to keep everything in check with what's going on with my health and my mind.
And what are some of the things that, like, and I imagine different things resonate at different stages, but what are some of the things that maybe really resonated with you the most?
I think the one thing was definitely breathing and breath work. Those exercises were vital to me because I couldn't catch my breath. And I don't know if it was nerves. I still can't quite explain it. But whenever I started to talk to people about anything personal, I would get something caught in my throat, like I couldn't speak. And so the breathing exercises helped to just calm down my whole nervous system. So that was really important. I think meditation and writing in a journal, just really got that energy out of my body that I needed to do to calm down. And sleep, like just a lot of sleep was huge in that. And now, since then, I just went through 2 surgeries in and around my heart, one expected and one not. And I found myself trying to get back to those basics again because you kind of get back into life and you think you're okay. And then you're like, nope, I still need to keep checking back in with myself and what's going on. And so I'm back to doing yoga and breath work and looking for other things now. A lot of Reiki helped as well, and a lot of just talking to good people. So,
Yeah, like however you're moving it, right?
mhm.
Can I ask you, like, would you be able to like share a little bit more about the breath work? And the reason I'm asking is because a lot of times, many people on this podcast have mentioned breath work. And I remember when it was mentioned to me at first, I'm like, but I am breathing. Like, I think sometimes if we haven't done it, we don't understand how helpful, like we take our breath for granted and we don't
Mhm.
realize how useful it can be. Like, so what is something simple that you might do if you're focusing on your breath?
Well, I found, and I think I was hyper aware of it because I couldn't breathe for 2 months. So I was like, whoa, I really need to concentrate on this breathing now. Um, it's simple things like whenever I get into my car, and I'm always driving somewhere with my son. and getting groceries, I have to stop and I take a couple really deep, really conscious breaths and just let them out, twice as slowly as I take them in. And it really just calms down my entire nervous system and lets me go to that. I also do this kind of yoga breathing that we learned at Grail Springs with someone. And it's almost like treating your body like a pump where you're breathing and your body's moving in and out, like how your heart works and how your breath works. So it's just really the slowing down and really concentrating on taking it in really slowly and letting it out really slowly. And I find that I do that all the time just to calm myself down. And then I can refocus and go, okay, what am I working on? What am I doing? How am I feeling? It just gives you a chance to pause for reflection of what you're doing. But there's great breath work courses out there, some great yoga breathing that you can do. And it just gets you inside of yourself. And breathing is like probably the most important thing I've learned about this year.
Well, and you brought up one other thing. First of all, I love that because I just think we can all be using it. And I use it, it was inspired by different reasons, but I use it exactly the same way, like to just calm down and become centered. Like, I'm okay. I'm right where I need to be. Like, what's going to happen next? But the one thing I wanted to see if you could touch on, because I was there with you at Grail Springs, which is a wellness center here in Ontario, Canada. And I remember you saying, and you can correct me if I've got this wrong, but one of the things that was frightening to you is that, like, your heart is in your body. And it's not that it's working against you, but like it's scary because it's part of you and it feels out of control. And when we were there, you got some sense of like maybe by using these natural methods, you could become one with it and control it a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that we were talking about that right after our yoga class. And I think I was looking at my Fitbit saying, oh my gosh, that's the calmest my heart's been since coming out of the hospital. And so I think I realized at that moment that doing things like yoga and calming myself down, like I do have control over it. Like I can't change what condition my heart is in, but I definitely can change my physical response around what it does in the rest of my body. And so I think that that's a really important thing to understand. Like I did an MRI recently and they told me that like I think 80% of my heart is covered with scar tissue from working too hard. And when I heard that number, it terrified me. Like I cried. And
Yeah.
I was like, holy moly, like that's just like that's insane. Like that's intense. I'm like 43. But realizing that I can control that, what happens now and how my body reacts to things and how I mentally react to things is really important to understand that that's already there. And, it can't be totally reversed, but I can definitely work towards making everything around it healthier. And that's important, and my reactions to things. And that's what's really important to the way that I live my life now. And, the jobs that I choose and how I react to things, I just have to be a lot calmer about it and more selective with how I live my life right now.
Well, that's my next question. So for, somebody who is listening to this who, maybe is an entrepreneur or has a really busy corporate job or just a busy life in general. So, identified with your introduction and the kind of hectic, busy, on the go lifestyle that we mentioned right off the top. Can you tell people like what that looks like now? Like, how did you modify things?
Well, it's interesting because I never thought I could stop, right? Because I ran my own business. So I thought if I stop, then, the money doesn't come in if I slow down. And it's funny because I had to stop after I got out of the hospital and nothing changed and things got better. I was calmer about things. I was more selective about who I worked with. And, the clients I have now are great. But I also dictate what I do and I take naps during the day and I never would have even dreamt of doing that before, but I have to. So I do. And I just block my schedule to the times when I know that I have energy, and some days I just don't. And I accept that. And coming to that acceptance is good. But the money didn't change. The lifestyle certainly did, but it's so much better because you do realize you can slow down. You do realize you can take time off. And you do realize that if you're not running the show in your own body, you can't run any other show either. And I had a hectic life. Like, events are hectic and the travel schedule was crazy. And I don't need to do as much as I put the pressure on myself to do before. And it's very clear to me now. And I see it with other people, and I recognize it too.
Yeah, and don't you think like we almost get like addicted to it? Like we're just
Yes.
busy. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we just don't even like know that slowing down is even possible.
Or you feel really guilty about it, which
Yeah.
is what it took me a long time to get over the guilt. And I'm like, why do I feel guilty when it's my own life? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's so ridiculous to feel guilty for not doing something and also to remember that nobody sometimes knows those deadlines you're putting on yourself except for you. So
Yeah.
it's not other people that are expecting you to do things, it's you. And you can dictate those terms. And once you do in a different way, it's so much more pleasant. Like, I spend so much more time with my son and my partner and, at the beach and enjoying my life than I did before.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like I've noticed like such a big difference in you, and yeah, like just the calmness, it just radiates from you now.
Yeah, I wasn't that calm before.
I didn't
Definitely
realize it
wasn't
either.
calm.
Like it didn't strike me as like chaotic the way you described. It just seemed probably unfortunately just normal busy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think women feel that, and they feel that pressure to outperform in everything that they do. But taking care of yourself is outperforming too, like it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, and on that topic of, like women, self-care and heart health, I remember when you had to go, for the heart rehab right afterwards, and you were with a lot of like older men,
Yes.
so, and like you said earlier, there was not a lot of information for women your age. So like based on your experience, like what can improve, what needs to be known, like for women your age or are like in their 40s or in their 50s or younger.
So I think the biggest thing is you really need to advocate for yourself. You need to ask questions and you need to do research. Most of the medications that they gave me are geared towards, 70 plus year old men. And they're not about longevity. They're just about sustaining the rest of what is assumed to be your short life. So I had to do a lot of research on, you know, what drugs affect you in the long term because I have planned to be around for a long time. And also what drugs affect you as a woman. The medication that they give you is meant for 70 and 80-year-olds that probably don't have that much longer to live. And so they're not geared towards a woman, who's still in the prime of her life. Or, I could still have kids if I wanted to.
Hmm.
They have no bearing on the fact, like, I'm going through perimenopause right now. Nothing about that. Like, nothing about hormonal changes, which definitely affect. And they try to give you drugs that, if you research them, have really serious side effects, like in the long term. But if you're 80 and you're an old man and they're giving it to you, you probably don't care about that. But I do. Like, I still have a
Yeah.
young child to raise. So you really have to do your research and advocate for it. You also have to look at natural solutions for what you're going through, natural herbs and different things, which they totally discourage you to do. But I went to an amazing naturopath that I think's been probably on your show, Carolyn, who you work with a lot. And she
Yep.
was amazing. And we did Reiki treatments and we did, I take teas that she recommends and they do really, really help me. And so I think it's recognizing those things. And I wish I would have pushed more ahead of time of like, I don't feel good. So it didn't get to that extreme point. But I'm still pushing for my health right now because I just had a defibrillator put in. Some other things happened that I had to push for, or things that they wanted me to do that I knew weren't right for my body at all. And I refused to do. So it's educating yourself a lot. And trying to dig through all the research in there that's not readily available.
It's just so remarkable. Like, so what I hear you saying is like just really, yeah, like taking a holistic approach, figuring out what's right for you. And it could change over time, but it is always remarkable to me, like whether you're in a situation like you are or other situations, like when it's a traumatic event,
Hmm.
and we really do need to research and find the best help. Like we have longer to like, I don't pick out stuff for your house or your shoes. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you just don't know, or sometimes have the time or the mental capacity because you're scared and you're
Yep.
exhausted. So when you really need to do the research, it can be tough.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Mm.
Yeah.
So were there other, like when you were researching the drugs, for example, were there alternatives that were less harmful?
Not really. Yes and no.
Okay.
They're ones that have less long-term effects. And the thing is they tell you that you're going to be on them forever. And so you really have to decide if A, you're comfortable with that, which some people are, and I honor anyone's choices that they make. But I'm really looking into diet and lifestyle to see which ones I can at least reduce, if not go off eventually. So I've looked into a lot of alternatives to it, and I really do believe you can heal your own body. I think there's some things you have to be on, but I don't believe I'm not on many things that they've told me I should be on. So, and I'm trying really hard to supplement that with good health and good nutrition.
So what would you say? Like, I know this is like a gigantic question, but like, you know, at this moment in time, like, what are some of the biggest, like, personal lessons or changes that you've taken from this?
Well, it's changed my life in every way possible.
Starting
Um,
there.
Starting there, simple things like holy moly, that's totally changed. I think I really do. I mean, going back to it, like I listen to my body and I advocate for myself and I do a lot of research and I read a lot. And I think that it's up to you to also know what's right for you. In all of my time going for appointments in the last year, nobody once ever asked me how I was doing mentally with anything that was going on. They were just looking at my physical health. And I think that a lot of people forget about the mental health side of when you get a serious diagnosis. Like, this is like, it's like if someone told me I had cancer or something else major. Like, I live with this every day. And some days I'm great with it, and other days I'm not great with it at all. And so I think that women's mental health is super important to advocate for, but also finding the solutions that work for you. You know, it's easy to fall into the trap of going the other way as well, like becoming that super yoga, perfect. I write in my journal every day, in doing all of that stuff too, and then not feeling like you're doing that side of it right, which I think I struggled with as well. And so just finding that right balance and then really just researching and advocating for everything for yourself, whether it's advocating with other people or just internally about what works right for you. And there's not a one stop solution for people's health of what makes them feel better at that time. It's some weeks I write in my journal faithfully, and other times I haven't picked it up for months. And I don't feel bad about that anymore or guilty about that. I feel like I just follow my own rhythm of what I'm doing. And I really need to honor that and respect that because I can't subscribe to what other people think is right for me because I need to figure that out for myself.
Yeah, and it changes, right? Like one day, like
Hmm.
a journaling or something like that is going to feel great, and other days, going for a walk or something else. But I think, like you said, it's that just checking in, like meeting
Hmm.
yourself in the moment and being like, okay, like, how am I? And in my personal experience, it's like, what kind of is the best healthy choice I can do next? Like, I was feeling crummy the other day, and I'm like, you know what? I think today it's going to be, I'm going to take a bath and go for a walk. Another day it
Yeah.
might be something else, but, instead of doing something destructive, like, what is some small good for me thing that's going to help.
And I think the biggest thing too is patience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a yoga breathing class I listen to, and he makes this joke all the time, and it's like, we'd rather you be patient than to be a patient. And it always sticks with me, and I don't know why, but it's true, because some days I can go for a great hike. I live beside beautiful trails and I'm fine. And other days it takes it's super hard to walk for 10 minutes. And I just need to know that as long as I'm trying to do something, that it's good. And I have to be patient with myself, because some days are good and some days are terrible. But at least I'm trying, and that's good. And that's good enough some days. And I think that's you don't need to be everything every day. And, it's just patience is huge, because it takes a long time to heal from these things.
Yeah. And also, like, when we're talking about this, it reminds me of the point you made too about, the doctors maybe not recognizing what was really going on early enough. It's like when we're not feeling good to like investigate things. Like I think
Hmm.
sometimes we want to ignore things because we're like, well, if we ignore it, it can't be there. It's not true. I don't have to face it. But the fact is, it's there. So when
Yeah,
we meet it, we're like, okay, you don't make me feel good, but we're then at least empowered to do something.
exactly. Exactly.
So, do you have, yeah, like any other advice for particularly women, but men too, who, maybe are putting their health off to the side? Maybe they don't feel good. Like, where is a good place for them to start, just based on your experience?
I think the best place to start would just be listening to your body, and also recognizing, taking stock of those, like we were saying before, those demands that you're putting onto yourself, whether they're really necessary or not, and taking stock of where you're at and when can you take more time for yourself or people that you want to be with or that you love. I think COVID slowed everyone down a lot, and I don't know if it's good for people or not in some ways, but I think it's the getting back to basics is really good, but also listening if those things don't feel right in your body. And often when you don't feel right mentally, like I said, I was feeling chaotic. There's a physical symptom of something else that's going on there that you need to be aware of and look at as well.
And I just want to thank you so much for, well, it's just as your sister, it's been, hard to watch you go through this, and yet um, you're just so remarkable. I'm not even finding the words right now because I
Thank
might
you.
start to cry. But like just your healing journey and your commitment and the big changes that you've made, and I also just really, as much as I know it's been tough, it feels like you're also just enjoying life more, like enjoying yourself and enjoying your family and enjoying your time. So, and that's really why I wanted you to share this so that people who are like maybe in the thick of it see that there's this possibility. And I know that we're never quite through. We're always, in the weeds to a certain degree, but there's this really potentially positive way of living. And with that, I'm just curious, yeah, if you wanted to leave listeners like with any, I don't know, closing thoughts, parting words, anything that needs repeating or didn't get said.
Yeah, I don't think I have very much to add. I think that it's just, yeah, like I said, it's just important to be patient with yourself and to take care of yourself and to listen to yourself and not let things around you influence you to distract you from that, because it's really important that you take the time for those things to be right, and not wait too long. I really wish I would have listened to my body earlier, to make sure that I didn't get as far as I did in this. But now I'm in it, and it's okay, and it's a part of my journey. But it's really listening to those cues early on so that you can prevent serious things from happening or be better equipped to deal with them, I think would be my final thoughts for that.
Thank you, Anne. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.